On March 22nd, I actually had an encounter with the YouTuber Short Fat Otaku, who is well known from the Gamergate era. Now kind of like fell off because he's just picking fights with anyone. But he has a very interesting take on like trans rights and so on. I blocked him now, but there are a lot of interactions that we had. There was this whole thing about like him wanting to debate me because apparently Leaflet and Oko didn't do like a good enough job, and you know, he knows so much more because he's obviously a cis man who knows more about the trans experience than me and also has the superior view on trans rights than me. I saw this tweet on March 18th actually. Nobody reasonable actually thinks that trans women metamorphose into biological females. The ask is not a belief that men are women. It's don't be an asshole. You don't have to like trans people. You have to leave them alone. And essentially his view on like trans topics, essentially, let me showcase this. So he uses the definition because he believes that dictionaries are prescriptive, not descriptive. So he thinks the word woman, I love using Comic Sans, it's so funny, is adult human female, essentially, you know, like the old definition. And female points to having large gametes. So his definition of a woman is this one, and female means that you have large gametes. And because trans women don't have large gametes, that means we are not women. It also means that intersex women would not be women. Infertile women would not be women. Apparently, after the point of, you know, being menopausal means that you're no longer a woman because you don't produce large gametes. This is obviously not how anyone would use this word, right? If I'm going to refer to a female coworker, you're not going to be like, well, did you check that she's actually fertile? Nobody is going to actually think this way. But obviously he is right. He knows more about these things than me. And I tried to explain to him how ridiculous this is because he uses language like biological female, which is made up by TERFs in order to invalidate trans women and, to be fair, also intersex women, right? We saw that with Iman Khalif, that they still insist is actually a biological male. And they keep pushing this, and we tried to explain this. It was a whole shit show, it went back and forth and so on. And I called this out. I was like, what aspect when it comes to the classification of biological female are we using? Gametes not reliable enough to make this claim without excluding cis people. Chromosomes not reliable enough either. HRT gives you changes associated with the opposite sex. Primary sex characteristics can be adjusted. Focusing on reproductive organs would exclude cis people. Intersex people by default break the black and white thinking, and their exceptions doesn't really fly. Trans women are women. We don't quote-unquote become women. We may adjust our appearance to match our gender identity more, but that doesn't mean we weren't set gender before transitioning. Also, being female is not a requirement of being a woman. Being born female, producing large gametes is not a requirement to be a woman. So I said this created like a whole spat. He was like, oh my god, debate me, because he really wants to debate me, even though he quote-unquote has a pro-trans position because he doesn't want us in camps. He doesn't want to force us to detransition because he's also a chaser. You know, if you put in the effort to look how he wants us to look, then we earn the label woman and we earn like his respect. So essentially we need to appeal to him and we need to be thankful that this is like the compromise, right? And I went on this whole like tangent about like how these performative liberals are thinking that they are like the saviors of trans people. We need to appeal to them, concede to them, not actually call out their transphobia, their gross rhetoric, because, well, they're not as extreme as the rightoids. So we need to be thankful. And that was a whole thing. It was like, it's so annoying. Obviously I haven't blocked because, you know, things were just getting out of hand. It went on for way too long. And he posted a video, a 1 hour long video on the Nyara problem, calling out that activists like me are ruining the trans community, giving trans people a bad reputation. And actually, I am on the same level as Sargon, which is like kind of interesting because Dev's and Sargon's view of trans people is incredibly, like, it is the same, right? Both of them don't view trans women as real women. They don't view us as female. The only difference is that Dev is a chaser and is attracted to trans women, and if we perform femininity well enough, then we are allowed into women's bathrooms, but we are not allowed to compete in women's sports. Also, we shouldn't go into women's prison, right? That was also like a thing. He was also pushing this. And Sargon actually made a video about this whole situation, calling out Dev because his rhetoric just falls apart. It is so interesting. It is so interesting, but he doesn't comprehend that because he thinks that he's the savior of the trans community, right? So I watched this video and I saw the end of it, right? The 59-minute video ends with a clip of me getting head pats and him being like, oh, it's going to be the liberals who are going to save you, kitten. Like, who the f do you think you are? What the f is this? Like, goddamn. Holy shit, look at this. Their normies view trans women and women's sports as such a hard line for them that they will vote for a right-winger who would abolish all trans rights. Nobody actually cares about trans rights because trans people are not really an issue. People care about, like, actual real policies that are going to improve their lives. The housing crisis, you know, things getting worse and worse, the job market, livable wage. Like, these are winning positions. Throwing trans people under the bus is not going to actually win you elections. And trying to compromise, moving the needle further and further to the right is actually not going to help anyone because people on the left are not going to be satisfied. People in the center don't give a shit. And people on the right, well, they're going to vote for their rightoid candidate, right? Like, it doesn't, you don't win anything. This position is so ridiculous, it doesn't gain you shit. And it's so annoying that you can call it out in numerous ways. And this pseudo-intellectual guy is going to sit there and be like, no, don't worry, kitten. Everything is going to be okay. You just need to accept that you are other. Actually, you should be thanking me that I even call you she. Anyways. But if there was a reasonable centrist candidate who didn't accept trans women and women's sports, but who also didn't agree with every maximally anti-trans stance the way the right does, well, that guy wins elections. So you want, like, someone like Gavin Newsom, and you want us to be, like, thankful. This is how he ends. You're going to get the right to transition enshrined in law. You're going to get your anti-discrimination laws too. You're going to get banned from women's professional sports, and even if you don't have the intelligence or the humility enough to thank us for it, you're still going to enjoy it. You're welcome. You can either get with the program or keep pouring gasoline all over yourself, because if you ever light on fire, it's not going to be me who burns. Bro wrote this down. Bro wrote this down and was like, got you there, kitty. I got you there. It is so condescending. And the fact that, like, this guy, this absolute loser, is just going to sit there and be like, yeah, if you would appeal to me, if all these trans activists would just appeal to me, you would win. You would get all of these things. I'm not going to do anything to help you because you're not thanking me enough. Like, it's so weird. It's so gross. Like, what the what do you mean? This is supposed to be an ally? No, he doesn't even call himself an ally because he doesn't do the things that I want him to do, which is to accept trans women as actual women, right? Like, it's too much to ask for. He calls me neuter. And that's what I have to be thankful for. The thing is, like, bro was called out, right? Bro was called out on his chaser stance, right? Like, this is his chaser stance. He used his trans woman friend, his token trans woman, who put in so much effort in order to look like a gorgeous woman, you know, she's very attractive, and said that, like, yeah, you're a woman if you look feminine. This is a woman, but this isn't, because he's using terms like gigahorn.
Question, are trans women actually women? Do they look like women? If yes, then yes. And that means to the terminally online trans community, I am highly transphobic, even though I support a ton of pro-trans policy prescriptions in government. Because what it means is that I respect the identity of a trans woman only if they pass well enough for my intuition to see them as women. And my response to that is, well, too bad. Yeah, it kinda sucks, but guess what? None of us are actually fully self-authored beings. We are not what we say we are simply by will alone. For example, I'm a fat guy. I am not a thin, muscular guy. I could become a thin, muscular guy with a lot of hard work.
The thing is, like, but you're still a guy. And to be like, no, your gender identity is not valid because your appearance doesn't meet my expectations, that is transphobia. And even like VTuber cringe, being like, Curry being like a bi intuition here, he means this. And I was like, it's fascinating how everyone seems to get this about Dev's position except for Dev. It's so funny. Everybody understands that his position doesn't make any sense. It is not a pro-trans position. It is not a anti-trans position. It is well, as long as you accept that you need to appeal to me, you need to put in effort in order to appeal to me, then I will view you as a sex object. You know, like, if you make my dick hard enough, then I can call you she as like a little treat. You are overweight, right? Yeah, you're short. But people are not going to be like, well, you're not a man. Society as a whole is not going to ban you from men's spaces, right? You can still go into the men's restroom if you're a short fat guy. Also, this guy never talks about trans men. He exclusively talks about trans women. And like the concept of somebody using their token trans friend in the entire video in order to be like, well, she can do it, why can't you? Why can't you put in the effort in order to look like her? Why can't you meet these beauty expectations? Everything is just about appearance. It's never about the human being as like a human being. We're never anything other than just sex objects for these people. And that is transphobia. And everybody can see that this is just a chaser position. And you think you're incredibly right about this because you're so incapable of understanding that you're wrong on a position that you unreasonably reasoned yourself into, and you're trying to justify it with like some pseudo-intellectual talking points, that you're just stuck on it. You're too narcissistic. You have too big of an ego to understand that, hey, maybe my position is actually not correct. Honestly, I don't even give a shit if you're transphobic or not. I don't even want you as like a trans ally or something. I just want you to be fucking honest with this for once. That is what I want. I want you to be like, yes, I'm transphobic, but at least I fetishize your existence. You will never be anything other than other to me. But as long as you know your place in society, I can still sexualize you. That is your position. You want people to have access to transitioning, to like gender affirming care and so on. That we appeal to you, that you can fetishize us. That is what you want. That is your entire position. And people are sitting in my comments being like, oh, why don't you debate this guy? Why don't you debate this guy? What do I gain from this? You're not going to do to help us even get there. You're just going to sit on the sidelines and be like, well, if these drones would start dressing pretty and looking pretty enough, then I can like jerk off to them, and then maybe they're going to get rights because they're going to be more socially accepted than all of these giga horns. The entire root of like the pro-trans argument is that our gender identity is that of a woman and our appearance doesn't match that. So we need access to healthcare that can help us alleviate that distress, but that doesn't mean that you can only have like the gender identity of a woman once you look like the beauty expectations tell you how women are supposed to look like. Like, it's just gatekeeping. It's moving the goalpost. People who are anti-trans will always move the goalpost to, well, you don't produce large gametes. Well, you never had period cramps. Well, you don't have a uterus. People will always use that in order to, you know, invalidate us. And it's funded by ultra-conservative organizations who want to make HRT illegal as a whole, as like a blanket ban. The same when it comes to abortion and so on, because they want to remove bodily autonomy. And the fact that you think that everybody believes like you, that everybody thinks like you, is such a ridiculous position. Normal people don't think about this crap like that. Normal people are not stuck and like brained about these topics. The bar for passing in real life is entirely different than online, because online everything is like so brain, and we are not going to get acceptance if we say, yeah, all of like these trans people who don't look pretty enough, they are not actually trans, and we need to like gatekeep our community and so on. Like this transmedicalism, trans separatism, like it doesn't work. It doesn't help us. It doesn't benefit us. That is what I call out. And you call that the Nyara problem. Nyara and other similar unhinged trans activists are trans people's worst enemies, and I'm not kidding. If you unironically believe this, you're stupid. It's just pure delusion. It's so fucking ridiculous to push this during a time where they criminalize being trans, shove trans people into prisons where they forcefully detransition them using HRT, actually, but the other HRT, right? Where we are constantly under fire for literally anything. We just want to live. We just want to exist. We just want to live in society and be included in society. This is not like going to be fixed by us compromising and settling for the fact that we'll always be other. You can be a trans woman as long as you know that you cannot use public restrooms because it's too disruptive. You can't be in women's sports at like any level, even in high school, right? You cannot partake in like any programs for girls, right? Like the girl guiding situation. This is everything that is happening. And you think we should like settle for this? Literally, what the f? This Brianna Wu-ass position on trans rights is not going to help us. It's not going to fix anything. It's just not a position that is defensible. It is not a reasonable position. And it's exhausting, disgusting, and just ridiculous that people expect me to like have a debate about this. What do I gain from this? You don't have any power. You cannot influence any policy. Nobody gives a shit about your opinion. Nobody gives a shit about my opinion. What do I gain from this? The actual Nyara problem is that I don't have enough power in order to actually have a meaningful impact on trans rights. Also, I don't know if I'm a cat or a fox sometimes.